Hi, everyone. Welcome to the session. We've got a few more minutes before we get completely started, but just wanted to welcome everyone in. And as people filter in, just remind everyone that, as with all of the other sessions, please, if you have any questions during the presentation that you want to have answered, put them in the Q&A tab. And if you see questions that you agree with, would like to get answered, have an interest in, please make sure to upvote those so that they rise to the top and we'll get those answered in that priority. So we're going to give you about another minute to filter in before we get started with the session content. All right. Welcome, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your last session. We are going to be going through the topic of today's session. I deleted 4,000 lines of AWS CDK and shipped faster. Thankfully, we have Joseph here with us, who is the presenter for this session. Without further ado, I just want to remind you, please put your questions in the Q&A tab, and if you see questions that you want to have answered, please upvote them. Without any more talking from me, let's get started.
Hey everyone, thanks for being here. The title is The Whole Talk in one sentence, but I want to tell you the story behind it. Right, let's crack on. I deleted around 4,000 lines of AWS CDK from one of my own projects, and I ship faster afterwards. This talk is about why that happened and what it taught me about what infrastructure as code is actually for. Hey again, I'm Joseph Goksu, a senior platform engineer based in the UK. My day job is running the infrastructure behind an AI-powered learning platform that serves over 250,000 people. Outside of work, I build developer tools and open source projects at the intersection of cloud, AI, security, most recently, and open source financial crime prevention engine at opensource.finance. I have also been an AWS Community Builder in security and identity for 4 years, and I try to share my experiences online and at the tech events. The story I'm telling today is not from my day job, it's from one of my hobby projects. So, before I tell you the story, here is the receipt. Also, I don't want you to misunderstand that this whole speech could be applicable to big companies. It's just one example. Please understand and implement in a way that your company needs to. So this is one commit in one of my own repos. 94 files change, about 1,000 lines added, 12,500 lines deleted. The CDK folder alone was almost 5,000 lines. The rest was GitHub Actions, workflows, and tooling I will build to manage CDK. All of it gone in one afternoon. The product still runs, better uptime, and more users. So, three things in the next 25 minutes. It might be shorter than that, by the way. Why I wrote it, why I deleted it, and why I think this whole exercise gave me more infrastructure as code, not less. The last one is the part I want you to push back on if you don't believe me at the end. So the project was Markwise. It's a hobby SaaS. Hobby SaaS. It basically allows you to save your online links. It's like a web clipper with some additional features. And I start building it years ago, 3-4 years ago. I run it solo, and it has around 3,000 users at the moment. And for the first year, I deployed it from my laptop with a bash script, and it worked. That detail matters. We are going to come back to it. At some point, the bash script started to feel beneath me, and I wanted to do it properly. CDK in TypeScript, GitHub Actions on every push, OIDC for credential-less deploy, semantic versioning, multiple stacks, the full kit. And if you think about this, this is the thing that we implement to most of places, right? Because it follows the best practices. This is right way to do it. This is the proper way to do it. The word I want you to remember is properly. The word cost me about a year. This is what properly look like by month 12. 17 CDK stacks for a hobby app with 2,000 users, 3,000 users, run by one person. Look at the names: a Bastion stack, a billing stack, a GitHub OIDC provider stack, and a separate GitHub OIDC stack on top of it. 2 stacks for the OIDC setup of a project where I was the only person committing code. The hobby project's job description had quietly been replaced by the infrastructure's job description. And it's very annoying, right? It literally became a part-time job. So this is the slide that I'm most embarrassed by. CDK gives you SSM parameters for managing secrets and config, but across stages, across stacks, with the naming conventions I needed, it became so painful that I sat down one weekend and wrote a terminal UI in Golang to manage them. It was, I guess, 1100 lines. So it served me well, but if you think about this, you can create SSM parameters, and there is a bit chicken and egg problem, right? If your app requires SSM parameter, how can you manage it? There are some. Um, so in a simple app, you can easily do it, but once your application, uh, gets more complicated, things are getting messy. So you have to manage your SM parameters from a third-party tool. You either write yourself or use open source alternatives. So I decided to write my own. I built a tool to survive my own tool, as I mentioned. That tool have been the moment I stopped. 6 months later, 2 in the morning, a Saturday, I will push a one-line copy change to the landing page. The deploy failed because an AWS CDK, AWS SDK minor version bump had quietly changed how OIDC audience claims were validated. My GitHub Actions long role no longer trusted my own workflow. Imagine, it's very annoying, right? You build something, it's very complicated, you think it follows the best practices, and you want to ship very quick one-line change, but it fails. And I was not even aware of it for a while. So eventually I was on the floor of my home office at 2 in the morning reading IAM trust policy JSON for a copy change to a hobby project. If anyone in this room is nudging right now, you know exactly what I mean. This is the line that broke the spell for me. My infrastructure had become a part-time job. The product was not the product anymore. The infrastructure was the product. And I already had full-time job. So I gave myself one weekend to find an alternative. Docker Swarm felt abandoned. K3s was still a Kubernetes control plane to maintain. EKS was so expensive. Nomad was honest but new to me, and I needed the ship, not learn. I already know many things like CNCF tools, like I could go, Kubernetes, Minikube, like there are many alternatives, right? But as you know, for a simple solo project, you don't want to prefer that one. Um, so I was chatting with Claude Codes and trying to explain the problem I had, and it recommended me some tools, and Coolify was one of them. And I picked Coolify after checking all the trade-offs. It's an open source, self-hosted platform as a service built by an engineer called Andras. Apologize if I pronounce incorrectly. Uh, Also, if you ever watch this video, I thank you for this project. You are doing amazing job in there. It runs on a $12 VPS, 4 vCPU cores, 16 gigabytes of RAM, 200 gigabytes of disk, 16 terabytes of bandwidth, with Cloudflare pages and R2 in front of the static site. That's the entire stack. It runs on the same product for more users with better uptime. These are the numbers in human terms. On the left, the CDK era, 17 stacks, 3,000 lines of TypeScript, 6 GitHub Actions workflow for infrastructure, 1,000 lines of bespoke Golang tooling, 26 AWS SDK dependencies. On the right, the new era, one Docker Compose file that I could run it on my local machine and make all the changes, and I can push, and Coolify will pick up, create the image, and run it as a container and replace in the background. So 788 lines of markdown runbook. So the runbook contains everything like how to deploy, what to do, etc. It's very simple, direct runbook. No workflows for infra, no bespoke tooling, no AWS SDKs. Same product, more users, one Saturday between them. The thing I want you to notice is the runbook, 788 lines of markdown. Any of you could read that file on your flight home and rebuild my production environment by tomorrow afternoon. You couldn't have done that with my CDK without a week of context. Again, you might say, oh no, we have CDK, we have Terraform, everything is automated, I can run the Bash script. Yes, if you have the context, if you have the experience of your business domain, that's highly achievable. But for most of the projects, you have to understand the technical depth. Maybe you start your project with ClickOps, and later you had more platform engineers, they introduce IaC, it introduces also technical depth, right? They try to deploy new environments with Terraform CDK, but the first environments were not deployed or managed by this IaC. So you always had these problems. So realistically, if you don't have context, it's still so hard to create customer environment with IaC. So instead of AWS CDK, I was using Coolify the open source self-hosted platform as a service, basically a Heroku you run on your server. The flow is very simple. I write a Docker Compose file imported into Coolify, and that's my deployment spec. I connect my GitHub through Coolify's GitHub application, and from there, Coolify spins up my backend, the database, and everything else defined in the Compose file. After that, every time I push the GitHub app pings Coolify, it triggers a deployment automatically. No GitHub Actions workflow to maintain, no YAML pipelines, no runners to babysit. For the database, I have got a daily cron job that dumps it and pushes the backup to the S3. So Coolify handles the deployment side and S3 handles cold storage. Best of both worlds. Now, some of you have been waiting to say this since slide 3, so let me put it on screen for you. That's not the ISC, that's ClickOps with extra steps. Fair. Let's actually define the word then. Infrastructure as code exists to give you three things: reproducibility. Can you rebuild it from scratch? Reviewability. Can someone else read it and understand what it does? Reversibility. Can you roll it back without an outage? Three properties. Notice what's not in definition. The word Terraform is not here. The word CDK is not here. The word Plumey is not here. Only properties. The tools are negotiable, the properties are not. So apply the test. My CDK and my runbook tie on reproducibility. They tie on reversibility uh, because I tag the CDK as AWS legacy and the dash date. So it's one commit checkout away. But on reviewability, the runbook wins. My CDK was only readable by someone who already knew CDK, but runbook is readable by anyone in this room who reads English. Especially with AI tools, it's even simpler. You can introduce your runbook to AI tools. It can prepare and make things a bit easier for you, but human in the loop, of course. So here is a status. Infrastructure as code is not measured in lines. It's measured in confidence. Confidence that you can rebuild it. Confidence that someone else can review it. Confidence that you can roll it back. The unit is the rebuild, not the file. If your ISC is huge, but you can't rebuild from it without your one expert in the room, that's not ISC, it's a private language. 5 questions I wish I would ask in April 2024 before I wrote my stack. Take a screenshot. 1. How many people will edit this infrastructure? For my hobby, 1. For my day job, 15. Different answer, different tool. 2. Can a stranger reproduce my system from this code? With my CDK? Often no. With my runbook? Yes. 3. Is the ISC reviewable by my reviewers? Not the abstract ISC community, the people who actually approve my pull requests. 4. What is my rollback story when the ISC itself fails? CDK upgrades, SDK churn, OIDC drifts. Your ISC has its own failure modes that have nothing to do with your application. So the fifth one is Am I spending more time on the infrastructure than on the product? If yes, the infrastructure is the product. That was not the deal. One last thing before I close. I still write CDK every day. It is either some of my projects or some work with with many users. Sometimes you have to use Terraform, CDK. They are battle tested tools, right? It works really well at scale. So um, this speech is not about to avoid them. It's just understanding what are we doing and why we are using it, understanding the business and domain. So for this solo project, it was small and I was sovereign. It kind of match uh, it kind of match my requirements. So that's pretty much it. I came here to tell you I deleted my ISC. What I actually deleted was a costume. The discipline came back the day I stopped performing it. On the flight home, open your repository and ask one question: how much of this is the contract and how much of this just typing? So since we are watching this online, maybe you can't take a flight, but just think about this. Thanks for listening. These are the links on the screen. Happy to take any of your questions. If you want to learn more, just ping me. I'm happy to answer. Thanks again.
All right, Joseph, thank you. So we've got some feedback that was very interesting and very good. I do have a couple of questions for you, if you will. I think first off, is there anything that you wish that you would have done differently that you think people could learn from?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me. Thanks for organizing this event too. I know it's very hard to organize this type of things. I really appreciate that. You guys are doing amazing job here. So to answer your question, so I think if I start something again, I will do in a way that I do right now because I learned a lot of lessons. So yeah, I will do things in different way.
Are there any specifics that you think would be helpful for people as you look back, or is it just you probably take a different approach?
Right. I think understanding the business domain is the most important part because there are many options, right? You can go with Terraform, CDK, Plumi, or there are other CNCF solutions. So first of all, I would understand the business domain and the requirements. And after that, I will make a decision. So for this hobby project, I will definitely do things in a different way, just like how I do right now. Coolify, some CNCF projects like Volkey. Yeah, but for business, probably things could be different because Coolify doesn't work at scale.
So that was actually going to be the next question. Um, you mentioned that this was a solo project. For something that you are using for maybe a mid-sized business where you're running a fair amount through a few different cloud providers, Amazon being one of them.
Yes.
How would you approach making some changes? Like if hey, I do need to ship faster and we are probably in a situation where things are a little bit bloated, what would your recommendation be?
Right. To answer, I can answer your question for AWS. I love AWS CDK. I think it's a brilliant tool. It Because if you think about this, if you have 10 engineers, you can allow them to deploy their infrastructure and app using CDK. You don't need to have separate DevOps team for it, right? CDK basically allows you to achieve that. And I also believe in the Conway's law. The tech tool you select kind of shape your culture, and your culture shapes the tools that you select. So when you adopt CDK, it kind of change your way of working, and you start seeing that backend engineers start working on infrastructure, making some improvements. This is very impressive. You even don't need to have DevOps team. If you have, let's say you have ECS backend and you want to make deployment, normally you have to design complicated CI/CD pipelines, and it will be part of the platform of DevOps team responsibility. Or you can just use CDK deploy. It will pack your application and deploy to AWS ECS.
So, so are we advocating for maybe not having platform teams?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that, but yeah, CDK is kind of platform team responsibility, right? They have to enable other engineers to ship faster, and CDK could be part of it. They could make some POCs, experiments, or design the best practices, and other engineers just follow and run CDK. So that's also achievable.
And
in this, yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
In this, I want to say something, but I forgot to add here. After I make this all Coolify migration, my initial cost was $300 for hobby project, but I reduced it from 300 to 300 monthly to $12 monthly. So it was a huge cost reduction. Also, the resource allocation was more than AWS alternative. So it's, yeah, I can deploy more things, serve more users at low cost.
Wow, that's significant.
Yeah.
I think anyone would like to do that, especially with our AI bills creeping up. I guess one of my last questions is, there's a lot of, I think, not necessarily confusion, but we're all trying to understand how much should we rely on the tools that we have, like CDK, and how much should we be either replacing that with AI or augmenting it with AI? How do you think of kind of getting things done and standing up infrastructure and managing it? And how do you see that blend between what we have and what's available to us?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So AI gives you the ability to ship faster, but there is a problem with that. It is not deterministic. So you never know how did they train, or maybe it is out of date, right? It can use package some library version 1, it might be outdated, or maybe there is a security vulnerability. I think it is still so important to read your code and what's happening under the hood. CDK has set of high-level components, but every time I just go through that function or library and try to understand what is happening in the background, and it gives me more confidence, if it makes sense. If I understand what's happening in the background, I can manage it. I think in the past we were trying to do something and CDK was behaving not well, and we went through the whole code base and understand what's working, and we found a bug and later went to the open source repo and raise a PR for that. So, and we fix it, right? If we use just AI, I could ship faster, but I would never understand what's happening. the background.
That's a good point. It's very much a black box. All right. Well, thank you so much, Joseph. This has been really helpful and very insightful. If anyone has any questions, please reach out. We absolutely will be posting all of this to YouTube in about a week. But please ask any questions that you have, and also enjoy the rest of IaCConf. Thank you again, and see you
Thanks for
soon.
having me, Rob.